I can't get these memories out of my mind, and some kind of madness has started to evolve.
I wasn't here last week. What did you guys talk about? Fear. Y'all did better than me. Like 3 people knew. Okay, so they talked about fear, and last week we were planning on getting you guys some time in small groups to kind of just spend some time discussing and things like that. So that didn't quite happen as we expected. It's not a problem. I'm okay with changing the schedule for good things. So what we're going to do tonight is, first of all, how many of you were here last week? Okay, for those of you that weren't, we had a couple people just kind of share stories. Lexi and Chandler both helped me out. And just so you guys know, I was eating a big steak last Wednesday night. Okay, but it was delicious. Okay, Chandler, we were talking about fear, and we talked about 2 different kinds of fear. Chandler talked about a story where he had a car accident. And for those of you who have been there, for those of you who have never been in an accident, that can be quite terrifying. And it kind of like undermines some things in your life, some securities and things like that. But he also told about God sending 2 couples from the church that actually drove by shortly after it happened. It happened on a Sunday morning. And 2 of our couples that were coming to church actually stopped and were able to comfort him and things like that. And we talked about, they talked about the story of Jesus in the boat with the disciples, and this storm comes. And these people are panicking, freaking out, and they find Jesus asleep in the boat. And they're like, do you not care that we're going to die? Do you not know what's going on up here? And he walked out and he calmed the storms. And we talked about how God, through Jesus, has the ability to just calm those storms of fear in your life. He sends people to comfort you. He sends people to get you through the crisis and calm the storm in your life. And I think it's incredible to see those times in our lives where we've seen fears relieved through family, through friends, things like that. But there are other times, as Lexi shared, she shared about her brother and just the fears that came along with not knowing like what was going on in his life. And she talked about the fear every time the phone rang, the fear every time like he left and they didn't know where he was. And that we talked about, or she talked about, in the idea that some fear is unresolved. Some fear doesn't get wrapped up nicely by the end of the episode. Sometimes it's the to be continued. And we have to wait. And we just have to trust God, knowing that even if the storm never ends in that instance, that God is in control and He's got us. And it makes it hard when it's someone you care about, because you've got to trust that God's got them too. So those are two things that they talked about last week. And she talked about how when Moses passed away, there was a man named Joshua who had to take lead. And I don't know if you can imagine this, but Moses led for like 50 some years. He not only led, but he's the one that brought them out of slavery. He's the one that performed miracles. He's the one that sent all the plagues on Egypt. He's the one, through God. He's the one that was leading when the Red Sea was parted. He's the one who God handed the 10 Commandments to, and He brought them to them. So this guy was on a first name basis with God. He went up this mountain, met with God. God told him things, and he came back to the people and told them what God had told him. And Joshua had to replace this guy that was just this pillar of faith and leadership for these people. And I can't imagine what that would be like, to have to replace your mentor, your hero, and to try to earn the trust of all those people. But God repeatedly tells Joshua, just be strong and courageous, and know that wherever you set your foot, like, I'm going to give you that land. And that's a huge promise. And I think sometimes the only thing that got Joshua through was probably that promise. Because for 40 years of that, these people were roaming lost in the desert because they grumbled and complained a lot. So it wasn't like he was walking into these people who were going to just immediately accept everything that he said. He was going to get some pushback. He was going to get some challenges. So I know that there was fear involved in that, because God keeps reminding him, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. And I'm going to share a story of mine. And this wasn't the first time I was afraid, but it was different. I was 9 years old, and I was 10 years old. I lied. I was 10 years old, and it was December 9th of 1992. You can do the math. And I woke up. I woke up that morning 2 weeks before Christmas, right? And I didn't get presents. My mom told me that my dad was leaving. And I was 10 years old. I went to bed early, so I didn't hear the arguments. I didn't hear the fighting. I didn't know there were any problems in their marriage. So I was absolutely blindsided. And in the weeks that followed that, guys, I had no idea how it would affect me. I had no idea like the implications that would leave on the rest of my life. But my fear came from this picture that I thought my life was, this picture that I thought the world was, just shattered. And I remember calling my dad on the phone every night, crying, just begging him to come back. I didn't know what that would mean for him. I just knew that my life was now broken in a way that I couldn't fix. And my dad was the only person in my mind that could fix this issue, that could fix this problem. And I had to listen to him say, I'm not coming back. And what that did was, like I said, I had this picture of how the world was, of what, I had this mindset that there were certain things that I was protected from. I had this mindset that there were things in the world that happened to other people, but not to me, because I came from a good family. And in a day, right before Christmas, that was just absolutely destroyed. And like the questions that came out of that, like what it did was it undermined everything else. Like my security up to that point was all, like a lot of that was in my family. They were supportive. Like when I had an athletic event, when I had a basketball game, baseball game, football game, they were there. And now, like, there was so much about the world that in a day I just didn't understand. I didn't understand how you could stop loving someone. I didn't understand how you could change that much of your life in just one day. I didn't understand any of that. And what that made me question is any love for real? Like if my dad's going to peace out on my mom, like is he going to leave me too? Or is my mom going to find that life gets too hard one day and she's just going to leave? Like there were so many questions and there were so many fears that were just forced into my life because I had no idea what was coming next. And maybe some of you guys have been there. Maybe some of you guys have experienced that with a parent leaving or something like that. Maybe you haven't. But I guarantee in everyone's life there's probably a moment or something that happened that just shattered the way you see the world. That made you maybe for the first time feel vulnerable, like you weren't invincible. That maybe made you feel for the first time like, yeah, I had these dreams, but I probably won't be able to reach them. Maybe your innocence was taken in a day, in a moment. Maybe something tragic happened with a family member. I don't know, but I know that fear creeps in. And the first thing it does is it attacks your securities. Like me. Like I thought my family was a good family, and now I had to rethink everything. I had to redefine what a family looked like. I had to redefine what a good family looked like. I had to do all this because the mold was broken. And unfortunately, when that mold breaks, there's no way to put all the pieces back together again. So you've got to create a different picture. So it attacks your securities. It attacks your beliefs. When you guys go to college, there are things that are going to happen that are going to attack your beliefs in God. I know that for a fact. There are going to be things that happen that attack your beliefs that your friends are really your friends. There are going to be things that attack those things you thought to be true. And when it gets you there, when fear creeps in there, the next logical step, once it attacks your securities, it starts to attack your future. It starts to attack your dreams. And it does this kind of in two ways. Fear kind of works in your life in two ways. The first thing it does is it says, don't even bother. There's no chance that you're going to achieve your dreams. There's no chance you can be what you want to be. You just don't have what it takes. You don't have what you need inside of you to become what you want to be. And if you have the guts to press on anyway, if you have the fortitude to actually say, I don't believe that, and I think I can overcome this, the next thing it does is it says, you have to do this all at once. Like here's your goal. There are no baby steps. It says you have to be there. And then you start comparing yourself to others who have been working at it for years or who are already there, and you think, I'm not good enough. Once again. So it makes you think that you can't grow, that you can't fail. It makes you think you have to do it all at one time. And guys, I want you to know that that's simply not true. If God had told me everything I was going to do when I was your age, everything he was going to call me to, I would have said, you're crazy, and I would have walked away. And God gave me little pieces of the plan and helped me grow a little bit at a time to the point where he could say, I'm going to put you on stage in front of 4,000, 5,000 people, and you're going to play music, and that's what you're going to do. At your age, I would have been like, I can't even talk in front of my class. Like I can't even sing at church. How am I going to get on stage in front of 4,000 or 5,000 people? But gradually, we had like there was this trust in the little things. Like I did a little radio show, and then I traveled on a ministry team, and I did these little things that built my trust not only in my abilities, but in God's ability to take care of me when He opens a door for me. And then when that door opened later, I wasn't completely terrified to walk through it. So guys, God's plan is usually not the home run. It's the single. It's being faithful in the small things. It's trusting Him with the everyday decisions. And as you trust Him with the everyday decisions, He begins to give you more and reveal more to you. And hopefully you'll be able to trust Him more in that process. Guys, I truly believe that fear is crippling. And I truly believe that many people end up average or below average because they give up on their dreams. No one says, when I grow up, I want to be average. I'd really love to shoot for the stars and make it to mediocre. No one says that. But the average is the median. That means half the population or less falls under it. What happens to our dreams that causes that many people to fall short? And I think a lot of it's fear. And other things that happen because of fear. We get into unhealthy relationships. We surround ourselves with people that make us comfortable rather than challenge us. Fear does a number on you. And like I said from reading that book, fear is not a natural response. Like your body doesn't know how to handle it because we weren't wired for fear. So there is a fight or flight kind of idea. There's a stress that is real and legit, and that's what keeps bears from eating you, or it shows you that you should run when a snake is right there or something like that. There's a natural kind of response like that is legit. I'm not saying like when you jump at something moving in the dark that's not natural. That is a reflex. But long-lasting fear of the unknown, fear because of outside factors and things like that. That's not natural. So your body doesn't know how to process it. So immediately fear is turned to toxic thoughts and toxic chemicals inside your body. And I just want you to know that we can overcome those things. And we don't have to be slaves to fear, because we'll never be alone. And that's the other thing that I want to talk about that fear creates, is this feeling. Guys, nothing changed about the time I spent with my dad or anything like that. Nothing changed with the time I spent with the rest of my family. My dad was a fireman. He was gone every other day anyway. So I saw him pretty much the same amount at the beginning. But what changed was, even though like the people I hung out with hadn't changed, my family hadn't changed, I felt lonely for the first time. I felt alone. And I felt like there were things that I was the only one that cared about in my life. And that made it seem like it was me against the world. And fear will do that. It'll isolate. It'll make you lonely. Don't let it, guys.